Welcome back, everyone, to Creative Corner from Daventry Studios. Today's guest in our social distance version, Zoom version of our Creative Corner is Mr. Kaiser Johnson, fresh from Phoenix, Arizona, where it's nice and warm, whereas Nicole is in Ohio and I'm in northern Minnesota. So we are going to be jealous of him this entire call, basically. So we won't let that influence our questioning too much. But again, I'm your host, Jesse Meal, and this is Nicole T. Kip to my left or right, depending on how you have your screen set up. And welcome to the show, Kaiser.
Thanks for having me. I was going to say thanks for being here, but I'm the one who's being here. So
yeah, well, we're all here in our own way.
Being here. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So Kaiser has a lot of creative irons in the fire. He's an actor. He's a writer. He is known to spin those mattress sale signs out on, just kidding, he doesn't do that part. But I'll let him introduce himself and tell us what he does in the creative world.
Yeah, so thanks. My name's Kaiser Johnson, and I write and I act, and I guess I consider voiceover just part of acting, one kind of doing it. So yeah, and especially during the pandemic and lockdowns and quarantines and stuff like that, I've done a lot more voiceover and a lot less on camera. But I do on camera acting and voiceover, and write fiction and nonfiction and book short stories and sketch comedy and stuff like that. So yeah,
very cool. So I know Kaiser because we were roommates in college, and then we actually did some work together for EWTN, and that was super fun. We wrote something called Young Catholic Minute, and that was just little sketches talking to people about the Catholic faith, and still available on YouTube, even though they're not actively being worked on. So you can check those out if you want.
So Kaiser, I know that one thing that we really try and focus on and draw out is attention to beauty, and truth is a couple of the transcendentals. So my first question for you is, how do you let truth and beauty guide your artistic career?
Thanks, great question. I think when it comes down to it, when it comes to writing or acting, and particularly acting, I think we as human beings really resonate the most with stuff that's true and honest. Like, if you watch a show or a movie where someone's not being real, and you can see that, it really detracts from the performance. And there are some actors who you watch and it's just like, gosh, have you ever experienced a real emotion in your life, or is this just all a presentation? And I guess that's, maybe they're not great actors, but some of them still do lots of work. In any case, I think the stuff that's most compelling to us is when we see something that really is a reflection of reality, and helps us feel and understand something about ourselves and about our place in the world and our experience of it. And I think you only do that through really being honest and open and true in what you're doing. And I think that's also true when it comes to writing. To really be able to share something that matters and impacts someone else's life always comes down to sharing something that's true, because true things tend to be compelling. So even if you're writing a fictional story, it's much more compelling if there are ways that it's true to life, even if it's you can still have something that's like magical realism and or science fiction or fantasy, and still have it resonate because it's true. And I think it also allows you this opportunity for beauty in creating something that is not only true but also has this just general artistic merit. And so it's in art, whether it's acting or it's writing, there really is this opportunity to share both the true and the beautiful. And I think the beautiful is a very special. I don't want to conflate them and say, well, the beauty is truth or truth is beauty, but there's something where there's this shared quality between them of, beauty being this transcendent expression of God, and in a similar way that truth is. And so there's a way that they have these shared qualities. So I think that's something that in the best writing and in the best acting and in the best art comes across. So you see truth, beauty, and goodness. And a lot of times truth and beauty will be the most apparent. So.
Great.
Absolutely.
Love that answer. Perfect. Yeah, no, it really is. So I know some of your roles, you don't always play like a heroic type. Obviously there are some, your Transformers role in the new animated series in Unplanned, you play a heroic character. And there are some roles that you played, for example, Stranger Things, you kind of play a comic relief, neutral type of character. And then there's some of your newer roles in voiceover where you're playing a more villainous or anti-hero type role. And a lot of times when we think about truth and beauty, we go, okay, well, we have to, Michelangelo, Da Vinci, Mozart, these beautiful, beautiful works of art. And we don't talk about, okay, what does it take for someone to put on a performance that is not necessarily heroic and still reflect truth and beauty in their art? And how do you toe that line?
Well, I think that, so my good friend Jesse Meal pointed out to me in one conversation that we had that without a villain, there's no opportunity for someone to be heroic, and without something or someone to overcome. Side note on that, it's fascinating how, you look at, like I think of Bernini's David sculpture. Obviously Michelangelo's is the more famous and fascinating, but it's interesting to see in Bernini's David, David's like he's throwing the rock out of the slingshot, or he's winding up for it. He's just got this look of grit and determination on his face. And it's fascinating that you see, like, your mind fills in Goliath when you see that, whereas, with David standing around and Michelangelo's David. But, we're able to imagine a worse Goliath than Bernini could have sculpted. And I think when it comes to portraying a villainous character, I think that's something that it is upon us to tell the whole story. And if you have a hero who's not overcoming anything, and it's not compelling, it's not interesting. I know, Jesse, you and I have talked sometimes about some of these worst examples of like faith-based films where it's like there are no real villains, or if they are, they're caricatures. And so there's not anything real for the hero to overcome. And so their heroism doesn't really matter, and it doesn't impact us, and we just roll our eyes at it and move on to the next thing. And so and it would be better if they just somehow managed to leave that out of there and let our imagination fill in the villain like Bernini does. But when a villain is going to be portrayed, I think it's super important that they be a truthful villain, and that they bring. And I think that so I am always trying to learn more about the craft of writing and the craft of acting, and this thing that keeps coming up over and over again is that villains should be as compelling as heroes, because that and not just two-dimensional ideas for the hero to go up against, and just convenient plot devices. Because if we can empathize with the villain, if we can see something of ourselves in the villain, then it means a lot more when when the hero is able to defeat them, and gives us an opportunity to really deal with something true and damaged in our own life, and see the beauty of overcoming it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is. So there's this great, I don't know if either of you have seen the movie Silence from Martin Scorsese a couple years ago. Not a huge fan of the ending, but there's the character that I find most compelling in that movie. So you have these two priests, they go as missionaries, and one of them ends up being martyred, and the other one ends up.
Spoiler alert.
This came out years ago. It's the spoiler. Yeah, spoiler alert, I guess. But I feel like the spoiler alert system has run its course. Yeah. But there's this character who he repeatedly is this he's not a villain, but he's a very troublesome character where he is always doing the wrong thing. Like he always like really messes up. Like, where are these people hiding? Oh, they're over here because I don't want you to kill me. And like, okay, well now you're gonna go kill them. And at one point he breaks into this prison that one of the priests is being held in, and he says, I need to go to confession. And in that whole movie, that's the character that I resonate the most with, because like here is someone who realizes that he's broken and he makes all these mistakes, and he is literally chasing down like redemption, like just to the point where, you know, you have these other heroic characters who are choosing their faith and what they believe in over what the government wants them to believe. And then you have this other person who takes the first opportunity to just denounce all that. Like, nope, I'd rather be alive, and then breaks into a prison so that he can be forgiven from what he's done. And it's very, it's a lot of times more compelling than the hero story in some cases.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I was going to get into some more specific, like heroes and villains, but I think we'll just head right into who are your specific heroes in your life? Who are your influences growing up that have led you to this point?
Boy, that's a great question, and it's one I wish I had a great answer for, and I'm not sure that I do. Well, let's see. I mean, there's certainly influences I've had in acting, not in the sense of like the performances I give, or it's like, oh, I want to do the kind of stuff that they do, or that kind of thing, or I want the career that this person had, or I want or I want to act in the same way. I want people to think that I'm that person. But you know, there are people whose work I have always, you know, admired and really liked, and who I've, you know, certainly learned from, whether they knew it or not. You know, I think so. You know, one of my earliest influences was Michael Caine. I really, you know, liked everything that I'd seen him do. Muppet Christmas Carol is great, and he wrote a book and had a like a little masterclass type film series on acting in film, and so it was really something where I was able to learn from him, and so that was a really cool experience to get to, you know, read that book and learn a lot of, like, especially when it comes to acting in film, because acting in film is such a technical thing, much more than theater is in a lot of ways, and so that was something where it was really interesting to sort of before I'd done any film acting at all, to start to learn how to do that, and so I guess he was a big influence for me, and you know, there are all these writers who I've loved. Like, this is gonna sound so stupid, but like Shakespeare is a writer who I love, and in the fiction writing that I'm doing, right now I'm writing a pulp adventure series takes place in the 1920s, and the main character, much in the way that I can tend to talk and overanalyze and use big words and that kind of thing. He way over explains, way over writes, way over talks on everything he does, and just because that's the way that he is. And so there's something one of the things that I like the best about Shakespeare is the beauty of the language that he uses, and the way that he structures paragraphs and thoughts and sentences and plays, and the way that characters come to what they're work things out. There's a really recurring theme. You look at the soliloquies of Shakespeare, these long paragraphs where it's very much the way that St. Paul talks about working out your salvation in fear and trembling, and these characters who are doing that in front of the audience, and really they're not talking to themselves, they're really talking to someone, and someone outside of themselves, transcendent to them. And like Hamlet, Macbeth, Mark Antony, and Brutus, all these characters who are going through these crucibles, and do so in a very beautiful way through this language that Shakespeare's given them to say. And so that's something that really inspired me when it comes to my fiction writing and that sort of thing. So that was a long answer and I'm not sure if it really got at two things: Michael Caine, Shakespeare. That's it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, and I think so often our influences in our life impact the way we live. But one thing I recognize more and more is that what really impacts the way that I live right now in the present is the people that are around me immediately a lot of times. And I know you have a family, right? So I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about your family and your work, and how those two things tie together and how they come together, really the secular culture combining with family life and faith life in that way.
Yeah, well, I'd say the biggest thing is that I've realized that the art that, and I don't mean to have this fly in the face of all that Creative Corner is, but that we're
going to shut this down now. So
my art and my work is not the most important thing in my life. And it's not my vocation. First and foremost, my vocation is to holiness. And my art and can play a role in that, and does play a role in that, or ought to, at least, in the best times it does. And then my secondary vocation, but still capital V vocation, is the call to be husband and father, and to image the love of the Father in that. And so the art that I do and the work that I do is subservient to that. It ought to serve my vocation, because I think when it comes to artists, there is a sense in which art is a vocation, or at least a really strong avocation, because in it we're imaging the creative love of God, or again, we ought to be, and we ought to be creating things of truth, beauty, and goodness. And so there's certainly an aspect to where there's this vocational aspect to art, but it always needs to be subservient to and support our true vocation in life, holiness, and if it's marriage or the family, or it's priesthood or religious life, that kind of thing, or if it's just the call to holiness, that it always needs to serve that. And if it detracts from there, then it probably means that we've got something wrong in the art that we're doing, because if it's not serving it, that it's probably not true art. So there was something else I was going to say on that, but I forget. Well, the one actually, now I'm starting to remember. one of the ways that it comes up. So a new book I have coming out in April. This is a nonfiction book. It's called How to Be Miserable and Alone, and it's about basically all the places in my life where I didn't realize that I was taking worldly advice, and it was really bad advice, and I was letting these smaller things undermine my true vocation and the truest ways of living out my vocation and my avocation. And I'm reminded of one part in there where this was several years ago. I had a conversation with another friend of mine who was Catholic, and he was talking about art, and we were talking also about relationships and that kind of thing. And I was asking him, he'd been dating this girl for a while, and I said, is marriage on the horizon? What are you thinking here? And he was like, oh, I can't, because not right now, because I've got this call from God to make art, and I don't want that to detract from it. I wouldn't be able to, if I started a family and stuff, and I've got this, this script that I have to finish writing, and this is a call from God, and this movie that I'll make the script into, and it'll change people's lives, and I know this, and I said to him, if they play my demo reel at my funeral, I've probably done something wrong. Because we're called, again, our call, and this is kind of defining the term by itself, but our call is to vocation. Our call is to have everything serve God and those around us. And so he was, unfortunately, at the time, and excuse me, has since changed his focus in life. But he was setting up saying this one love of mine must be a rival to this other love of mine, instead of this one must serve the other one. And that certainly God calls us to that if there are multiple callings that God has placed on our heart, ones will serve the other. They won't compete with the other. So again, that's another long explanation that I'm not even sure really answers the question, but there you go.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. And it reminds me of Van Gogh. He says, I feel there's nothing more truly artistic than to love people. Mm-hmm. I don't think he was necessarily talking about vocation at this point. But I think that's so true. Like, the greatest form of art, the greatest form of beauty is love, and love in the way that you're called in a permanent state of life, I think, is amazing. So yeah, thank you for that answer.
Yeah.
Very good. Do you have any advice? I know I don't want to keep you too much longer from your palm trees, but any advice for people going into, obviously, Hollywood, very secular world, and then also you're running into, like, the example you just mentioned, where even people can slip very easily into very secular ways of even looking at their own faith and life. Do you have any advice for anyone that's just starting to try to make their way in that world? Well,
the first advice I would have, and this is, it's going to sound flippant, but the first advice I would have is don't. Is really, because it is so easy to have something become a rival rather than a servant. And so I would say, really, if there is anything else that you can do, if you can think of yourself being satisfied, happy, fulfilled in any other way than art, I would encourage you to pursue that. I mean, we all need creativity in our lives. That is part of who we are as human beings. Chesterton says art is the signature of man, and he says that the primordial fact about man is that he is an artist. He was talking about the caves Caves of Lascaux, where they discovered. And he says it shows these scenes of hunting and that kind of thing, and so people assume that they go, oh well, look at that. These are scenes from their lives. So these cavemen were brutish, and their life was all hunting and survival and that kind of thing. And he goes, you're missing the thing that's staring you right in the face. You're reading these things from cave paintings, because what this is telling you is that at his most essential place, man is a creator, man is an artist. So we all need that. We all need to image the creative love of God. That's something we're all called to. For a lot of us, that will be in loving our neighbors as ourselves, and in doing tasks that allow us to create for those that we love. And I think, really that's what art ought to come down to. And so I guess on the flip side of it is if you go, writing is where I feel called to share truth, beauty, and goodness, or acting is, or voiceover is, or whatever, then first and foremost, I would say always be sure that it is serving that, because if it's not, then it's not real art. And also that always put it in its place and go, is this creative? Am I really being creational? Creational, is that a word?
Now it is.
Incarnation. And here, if you go, this is what I must do. Okay, great. I said, look, if you can do anything else, do something else, because there's so much struggle and there's so much difficulty that comes in doing this. But then on the other side of that, if you discover, yes, this is what I feel I must do, then let it serve your vocation and do it. So many people, go, I have to write. I just have to do it, and then don't write. They write a little bit here or there, but they don't really do it. I have to do this thing, but it's easier to look at Instagram, and so I'll get distracted for hours at a time, and come back and go, oh, I could have created today. Our desire to be seen is separate from our holiest desires, and that when you can serve creation, do it.
Good answer. And I think that's actually a great place to just leave it. If you can serve creation, do it. Because we're going to give a link to Eric's website. He has written a couple great works on ways to work out your mind, body, and soul. And we're going to link to his website. And if you sign up to get updates from his website, then you can get some free workouts and
video work.
Yeah, there you go. So we want to thank Kaiser for being here today and sharing his life with us and the warm weather with us a little bit. And of course, we wish him the best of luck going forward.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I was really glad to be here, and you guys are great interviewers. So thanks for having me.
Good.